Ahead. Hello, everyone. Everybody knows I'm Dr. Laura Foster since this is my private Facebook group. Let me go ahead and introduce my favorite person, the person that you have seen on here many times before, or actually rather more onto my regular page, because we did Coffee with the Docs all spring. Today, this is Dr. Heather Denniston. Heather, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and I just appreciate what you do and what you put in the world. So I'm just glad to be kind of like navigating around you and all of your great energy.
Well, thank you. I am just making sure that if you see me looking down, it's because I'm making sure that we are streaming live to Facebook. This is always the caveat that comes with going live through Zoom.
Yes.
Heather, how are you?
I'm great. We're going crabbing today, Lauren. If you're not on the West Coast, this is a West Coast thing, and it is. Sit on the beach and put in your crab pots and then have fresh crab right on the beach. So I'm super excited. I'm looking forward to a great week. And
I love it.
Starting early. Yeah.
I love that you do that. You start your weekends early. So for those of you who don't know Heather, Heather and I have known each other for, dare I say, at least 25 years.
Yes.
We are both chiropractors by education and profession. We have both created some detours. We'll talk more about that. We both have a passion for living life with a lot of zest and as authentically as we can. And we are just putting one, well, I'm going to speak for me, but I think you're my partner in crime, just putting one awkward step in front of the other, you know, trying to link arms with as many women as possible.
Yeah.
I absolutely love, love, love the human experience. And you and I have so many great conversations that this is kind of where this all came from. This is my dipping my toe into Soul She Says, which is what I kind of dream about as a place where we can have my famous next level conversations with people I think are living life in a really authentic, vibrant way and willing to have those conversations. I think that's where you fit in, Heath.
Well, thank you. And I want to just draw attention to the fact we did a fun sort of 6-7 series earlier in the spring called Coffee with the Docs. And that is still, if you guys enjoy what we talk about today, you can head over to YouTube, the WellFitandFed channel, and check Laura and I out there if you want to because it'll be more like these kinds of conversations. So feel free to go over there and catch the replays on those.
Well, and I love that, Heather, because for you and I, that was a place for us to start to feel normal because it was in April and maybe even the end of March.
Yeah.
And we were kind of, like I said, like linking arms with as many women as possible, trying to have conversations that made sense. And that really inspired me. Well, first of all, I have talked way too much on here about my path as to, you know, where chiropractic fit into that. And why, you know, speaking my truth led me in a direction that's slightly different from where I started off. And can you tell me, because I think it's kind of interesting as to the work that you do now, why, like, where did you go after you left chiropractic practice?
Yeah. So you and I both did chiropractic for over 20 years. And a couple of years before I left practice, which was about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I started just to get this unease, unrest. And I know you talk about that and not stuffing it and listening to it. And I did stuff it for a little while. And then it just was creating anxiety and tension. And I had to go in and evaluate what that was about. And at first, all the message I got was write what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you know. And so I started a blog and I started the WellFitandFed blog. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be a blogger. And then as the sale of the practice happened and I decided that I needed to move in a direction that I could put more of my energy toward this calling. It took a little longer to sell the practice because what I didn't know is as a woman chiropractor, it's actually very hard to sell a practice because women aren't buying practices and men don't want to buy a women's practice for obvious reasons.
Because they're awesome.
Well, thank you. And so it took a little longer. So that the urging and the leading had a lot of opportunity to percolate as I kind of slowly walked out the last months of my practice life and transitioned from, and I know you talk a little bit about this, from what I perceived as one identity to another identity and all that goes with that. Yeah. So to answer your question, I first thought, oh, I'm going to get into just writing and freelancing and blogging. And I got into that and realized, oh, this was one step in that rocky path across the river. And I had to get to the next step and the next step until I landed on the other side where I'm at now. And who knows, right? We don't know until the future, but it feels like I finally feel grounded in what I was supposed to move away from practice toward this other thing, which we will talk about. So it was an early calling, I think, to ask or to answer your question.
Yeah.
And it was just something that I was just like, oh, I can't ignore this.
And that's, just to speak to that, because if there's anything 2020, I think is representing, it's this bubbling up of information that feels not so awesome.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, we both loved being chiropractors in practice and traditional practice. So it was painful for me to have these urges and this information bubbling up, because I don't know that I could have imagined a job that was any better than what I was doing. And so it's this thing where you're like trying to trust and trying to listen in and have some level of faith in these urges and these desires that are coming up, even when you don't know what they mean. And so when I know when I'm on a coaching call and you and I do similar work, which we'll talk about, there's this thing where, you kind of want to bounce it off someone. You're like, this is what I'm feeling. This is how it feels as I'm feeling it, which usually doesn't feel awesome.
Yeah.
How do I get from where I am now to where I'm going? So what are you working on now?
What I'm working on now is I have a program called the Wellness Amplifier method that came from an evolution of things that I've done with WellFitandFed over the past several years. And what the Wellness Amplifier program is, I typically work with women or groups of women, but it is a concept around taking business owners, executives, and entrepreneurs and bridging the connection between their personal wellness and their professional success, and making that connection super clear that where they want to go in their profession has everything to do to the investment they're making in their own personal wellness. And lots of people don't know how to use wellness as a strategy to live, work, and play. And so that's where I come in.
Yeah. And, I think that wellness is probably one of the most poorly used words. I mean, I have my own definition of wellness, and you don't need to define it in one sentence, but what do you think makes up this concept of wellness? Like, even for you, because I know that what you put out into the world, from, your evolution of the Change Cave to the Junk You Should Know show to this incredible jump rope group that you have, these are all renditions of learnings that you have had yourself, right? So what do you consider wellness? Like, what is it?
Putting me on the spot, but
I'm just going to have a drink of water while you answer that.
Yeah, please do. It's definitely evolved. For the initial, when I started shifting back in college, there was a poignant moment where I was standing in my crappy college shower on a Sunday morning, and I was bawling, and I was arthritic, and I had GI issues, and I had headaches, and I was close to 70 pounds overweight, and I just went, holy crap, this doesn't come with a manual, and we have to spend time making our own personal growth, wellness, and optimization a personal project. And I just went, holy cow, I need to take this on as a personal priority project. And so it was from that moment on. So then I thought, oh, it's working out. And then I thought, oh, it's food. And it is both.
And
of
it
those
is,
things.
yeah.
But it's so much more than that. And so for me today, I would say wellness is being grounded in who you are, being open to exploring growth, having a boatload of self-compassion, continually learning and embodying the concept that Carol Dweck talks about of a growth mindset. So that to me is wellness, because if we can create balance along all, or integration along all of those platforms of where we are kind to ourselves, we're open to growth, and we're willing to listen to who we are, then all of those other things, treating our body and the movement it needs with kindness, understanding that food is fuel and not friend, and all of those other wellness strategies and things become obvious, or at least more obvious. They're never easy, but they become more obvious when you're really grounded in who you are and kind of listening to what your body and mind need and want.
Yeah, it's so true. And I talk about that a lot, because my first evolution of work I put out into the world talked a lot about trying to bridge what we just talked about, that gap between where someone wants to be and where they are.
Yes.
And a lot of times, you know, they would come to me and they'd be like, you know, I want my physical body to look and feel a certain way. I want my finances to look and feel a certain way. I want my relationships to look and feel a certain way. And, you know, I was like, okay. And, you know, we're like creating all these empowering, like you see my energy going,
Yeah.
empowering strategies. And then I was like, wait a second, we're back up. The thing I forgot somewhere in there was, this is the relationship it all hinges from.
Yes.
And this is my own journey too, is that at some point I was going out in the world trying to figure out how to create these extensions of myself, like, you know, the work I do in the world and the relationships I have and the community I have and my intimate relationship and my financial, what that looked like. And all of these things, they're part of me, but they are a portion further out in the ripple. And what I had forgotten to do, or somewhere I forgot the memo, or it wasn't mentored to me, is that I actually have to do this within myself. Like, I have to learn how to cultivate this sense of who I am, which means I actually have to slow the fuck down once in a while and be like, what do I need? And like, what do I want? And not what do I want it to look like, but what do I want it to feel like? You know, unfortunately.
I was just going to say, getting still enough to hear it.
Right. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. Now, you've been doing this work, like I said, in all those renditions I talked about, and now going into the Wellness Amplifier. This feels different now than things did 6 months ago. I'm really noticing that the women I work with are reluctant to look so far ahead, right? So it's like, I know you're really great at being like, what does my next quarter look like? But it's becoming, like, you really have to discipline yourself to want to make forward thinking goals right now, because I feel like people are very reactive right now, meaning like, I need to see how it's going to go before I can decide to commit to something. I need to see what the community is going to look like, what everything is going to look like. So do you see this showing up differently in your community? Because you've got your own set of, you know, giant women's community that you work with. What's different now? Like, no, I didn't ask you that before, but I mean, do you have?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And I like your word reactive. I'm seeing a lot of that, and definitely amplified perceptions of burnout and stress, and then puts us into fight or flight. And then we are in a space where it's very hard to listen and to be still and to kind of get into where we want to go as people. And I think one thing to note is that I think we've all been in this long enough to go, oh, we're not going back to October 2019 or December 2019, whenever the virus hit. Okay. So now we have to get busy creating a life that is congruent and connected to what's happening right now, and with the piece of unknowing too. So I think to answer that question in a much more succinct way, we can always be doing work from the inside, no matter what the external stuff that's happening is. I remember a great story from my friend Colleen, who went on a mission trip to Guatemala, and their guide said, oh, I want to have you to our home for dinner. Please come to our home for dinner. Just smiley and happy and content, and Grant, just really a lovely, lovely man. So they went to their home for dinner, and he meandered them through this neighborhood, and then outside a neighborhood, and then through a field. And then they ended up in the town dump. And through the dump, there was a basically tent city, but it was cardboard box city. And he literally welcomed them into a series of boxes made into a room. And he could not have been happier and more content. And she came home so moved by the concept of being grounded and content and happy where you're at, and working on that, even when there's so much unpredictability going on.
Yeah, that's why I love third world travel so much. It's because we think we're the bomb, and we go around the world, even if we don't really realize we think it, but we think we kind of got it figured out, like as this sort of first world experience that we're having, you know, where for a lot of our life, you know, our problems weren't really truly, and now I'm generalizing, but just
Yeah.
saying like our problems are a lot of first world problems. And when you go to a third world country, you realize, oh, many of these people are so much happier than I am. I don't think I had this figured out,
Yeah.
right? It's that
Yeah.
exact idea. So I can relate to this because all along through the summer and so on, I've been watching you just move forward and find your way and still creating things, and, you know, like showing up in your, not your bedroom like my office is, but your home office, and you're doing your stuff. And I was like stumbling over this. Like I moved in the middle of this, but I'm still stumbling. And then finally I was like, what am I doing? Set a goal. Like, for goodness sakes, Laura, do anything. And there's this whole thing. And I was listening to Zach Bush, who's a MD, has this great, you probably heard me talk about this online. He has this great interview on London Real. And one of the places that he talks about there, he reminded me of something I'd forgotten, which is when we're in this stress response, the creative part of our brain shuts down. Mm-hmm. And so my mission shifted. It was like, what do I need to do to feel like myself every single day? What are the things? What are the little things? What are the big things? What are the disciplined priorities that I can put in place? So
yeah, I love that. I love that list that you put out about these are things that you have some control over. How many breath, do you do any deep breathing? Your kindness, how much sleep you get. These are things that you actually, you do have some level of control over. And so I loved that, because I think right now a lot of people are in that fear state, and they're feeling very out of control, and it's very, in an ongoing way, it's very stressful, very immune suppressing. And Bruce Lipton talks about how when we're in fight or flight, blood shunts from the front of the brain to the back of the brain, because we don't have to be busy solving math problems or contemplating Play-Doh. We need to either get out of dodge or turn and fight. Yeah. And the problem is that the front of the brain also is all of our logic and our reasoning and our creativity, and it's being shut down when we're constantly walking around in this state of fight or flight or fear or stress response, however you want to put it. So it's super consistent with Dr. Bush's comments. And yeah. I think something that we have to bring ourselves back to, go, oh, wait, remember, we have to really be conscious about doing things that take us back to that parasympathetic space, back to the front of our brain, and all sorts of things can do that for us, that we have full control over, like your yoga class that you're going to be holding later today. Is that right?
I am. And that was one of the things that I realized is, through the earlier stages of the pandemic, I couldn't show up in my yoga studio, which is my happy place. It's one of the places where I feel the most like myself. And so I decided that, sure, I'm going to go ahead and offer some free classes online. And that way I can have this sense of community that I'm missing, even though we're looking through this. And, when I moved across Canada in the middle of all of this, I was in a rental house. This is number 3. And I was in a rental house where it was really hard to teach a yoga class. So I got away from it. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was like, okay, I need another layer. And I want to get to this because you have some ways that you put things into your program. So that was one of my questions to myself. I was like, well, I need a new layer, another layer of thing. And I was like, start teaching again. Just start teaching. And I think I have over 60 women signed up for the class this afternoon. So I'm like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, just me. I have some yoga pants on. So all I had to do is change my shirt and I'm good to go.
Well, and isn't that, we think about, it's so easy to fall into kind of just all the negativity of what's happening, but something like that, you got your yoga teacher training not that long ago. You could be in a studio seeing maybe 15 people or 5. This is an opportunity to bring 60 people to the mat in a way that probably wouldn't have happened pre-COVID. So I love that. I love that you are expressing that piece of yourself for other people to learn from and get that energy. And it's amazingly powerful. So thank you for putting that out there.
You're welcome. It's actually all my pleasure. It's one of those things that you give to others, but really I just feel like I'm mostly just giving to myself. So I'm glad other people enjoy it.
Yeah. That you mentioned the jump rope group. That's it for me. I keep thinking to myself, boy, this group is getting very big and crazy. And it's like, but it's just a passion. And you feel that way about yoga. And I love that. And I see it when you do your classes, like you are in your space. I love
in my space. Let's just talk about that for a second, because, this is when you're open to the gifts of the universe. I have been watching you. Everybody I know, all the women in my life who know you go, have you seen Heather's arms? Now, I know they're just arms and we're not supposed to talk about that like that. But sometimes, you know, things are nice and nice arms are nice. And I'm 51 and, you know, I have to work hard to keep those arms going. And so anyways, that was a totally long loop to say, I've been watching you jump rope for a few years now. Honest to goodness, it's the coolest thing ever. I am not the same, although you've taught me a few things and I can actually go several rotations without hitting myself. And tell me how many people are in your group.
Oh gosh. Well, I told the ladies in the group, well, just very quickly, it was a closed group pre-COVID just for people who had bought, I did this little beginner course that people purchased and they would get put into the group. And then in COVID, I'm like, what are some things I can do to just help people stay active? And I'm like, I'm going to open this group to the public. And all of a sudden I'm like, it's like that commercial. It's like 10, 12, 30, 20, 200, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I went over to the members insight section. I'm like, where are all these people coming from? Africa, Vietnam, India, like all over the world, women were joining this group. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So to answer your question, it's this morning, 1866, 1,866 women, all learning to jump rope, beginner and intermediate only, and mostly middle-aged. So, it's a pretty niche group. And so it's a lot of fun. And yeah, it's been a total passion. And every day I see someone picking up a jump rope just to move their body, and in a space where we don't have gyms and Pilates and Orange Theory and stuff, you can take 10 minutes and get an incredible workout, and it's amazing.
And to be clear, you teach people, like you're always, sharing things and like this like loving, compassionate, have fun with it kind of approach comes through. So will you go back on the Facebook page and just link that up?
Sure. I absolutely will. It's jump rope for women. It's pretty easy, but I will put the link below. So it's super easy for you to get over there and check it out, because it's, for somehow the energy got set there that people are not afraid to post their very beginner videos, big girls, small girls, all girls of all sizes, colors, shapes, and everything. And people are posting videos and saying, here's where I'm starting. And it makes it a safe space to be very authentic and try new things.
Well, and I love that. And I think that's the reason why I'm getting so many people that are signing up for the yoga, is because a lot of times putting your hand on the gym door or the yoga studio is so intimidating that you wouldn't, like, there's so many women who just wouldn't do it. Like we have we skip over this beginner's mindset idea, and we just think that we have to be really, really, really great at what we do, or we won't bother doing it. And so there's so many aspects that just prevent us from doing that. So this is something that you can do in the sanctity of your own home. And, the love and the caring comes through in the work that you're doing. So I know that we're winding this up because apparently you have some crowding to do. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more. Can you tell me, you and I were having this discussion, and there are kind of 3 things that you mostly focus on. You call them pillars in your Wellness Amplifier program.
Yeah. So with, you have this too. With 20 years of chiropractic practice, you have a unique grouping of people experience, what people are coming in with, what's working for them, what's not working for them in their life in general. And then having been out now for 4 or 5 years, and I became a personal trainer and I've been coaching one-on-one and stuff, I've another little capsule of information. And through all that, like we all do, we build on, as our wisdom grows, we build on that. And so what came to me is that there are some foundational principles in understanding how to be truly well that are missing for a lot of people. And so when I developed the Wellness Optimizer method, it immediately was like, oh, there's 3 pillars. There's the first foundational pillar that I call activate, which has to do with finding a very deep wellness driver, the why behind, why do you want to eat well? Why do you want to exercise? Because a lot of times they are should goals and not good goals. They're should because somebody told you should, you read that you should, you think that other woman is doing it, so you should do it, instead of good goals, which are look inside yourself and say, what is eating well or moving your body really going to get you, and why is that important to you? So that's first. The second thing is in that pillar is understanding that we can't do it alone. in the world we live in now, with the stress level, the busyness, everything that we've got going on, we need a support team of people to truly help us be well. And I call that your wellness pit crew. And we talk about how to curate that. Could be a neighbor, could be a practitioner, could be, I love Brene Brown talks about her brain trust. She's got several in her wellness pit crew that she's never even met. And they're just mentors of hers because of what she's read of them or heard them speak. And I know you are great about that too, is that you always have people speaking into your life and supporting you, and then and back at you. And then the third piece of that is understanding, and I actually originally, you taught me this, is understanding where you are leaking energy, because if you don't know where those holes in the bucket are, you cannot fill the bucket. And so understanding that. And then the second and third pillar, one is called adapt and one is called ascend. And both of those have to do with, okay, once we get that foundational piece in place, then how do we fuel for success? How do we become movement savvy and fit so that we can have the energy that we want, we can have the productivity that we want, etc. And then the ascend piece is all about understanding that parts of wellness include habit training, include how you interact and connect with people, your communication skills, all of those things are all part of how you are well as a person. And so that's how I broke it down, and that's worked really well for me and the clients that have been through it. And I love doing it. And it's a constant evolution, right? Like I think your programming, just tweaking and changing and improving. And so that's what I'm working toward.
And making it more relevant as you go, because one of the things that I know is life is not the same for men as it is for women. And as crazy as that sounds, I realized at some point over the decades is that I have been kind of working a male model for a long time. Like even the way I showed up, like, oh, I want to be a successful businesswoman. So I put on my big boy Levi's and I kind of showed up in the world. And I was like, okay, this isn't, I had a bit of a, let's just say it, a breakdown. And that had to do with the fact that I wasn't showing up uniquely as I am. So what I know about the work that you do in the world is you've infused this really important recognition that as an individual, number one, and this is what you're talking about, knowing your wellness why, cultivating that, when the alarm goes off at 5 o'clock in the morning and it's 10 below outside, you need to know why you're doing it. Because believe me, your motivation will not be anywhere close to you or around you. Even if you went to the bed in your workout stuff.
In your workout clothes,
which I've tried. It doesn't really work. And number two is, so there's like this knowing yourself, but then there's also like this very unique way that women show up in the world. And it isn't about putting it aside. It's about embodying it.
Yes.
Right? It's like using that as a way to move forward. And that's why I love when women who do a certain amount of development within themselves and on themselves, that this is something you can connect to strongly. And when you are leading a program like this, it's different. And I'm throwing that huge compliment at you, because it is different when you do work with you versus necessarily doing work with a man who has maybe looks like he's got all those things. And it's not a snag on man. It's just, you're not a man, you're a woman. And I love this unique way that you do it. So
thank you.
One thing is you have something to share.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So we talked about activate as the first pillar of the Wellness Amplifier, and the very first part of that is a workbook called the Wellness Driver Workbook. And I love to get people started with that. And typically you would come into my program and do that, but I want to give that to the people who are watching today. Awesome. And so we'll provide them a link and they can just download it. And if they have any questions about it, as Laura, you and I are similar in the way that most of our messaging happens through Instagram. So if anybody wants to just reach me on WellFitandFed through Instagram is the best way to message if you have questions or you want to talk through a piece of it, because it's deeper work. It requires you to sit down for a good quiet 30, 45 minutes and ask yourself some harder questions, which that's part of self-care, right? Is asking ourselves the tough questions. So
yeah. And, when you were sort of listing all these things that are part of the pillars and so on, the big reminder that I have for a lot of my clients is just this idea of, small hinges swinging big doors. Every little part of that might seem insignificant, but it all is part of a layering effect. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, you end up in a place that you didn't know how you got there, because it wasn't a whole bunch of huge steps you took. It was having the courage to take a lot of little steps. And that's where this program kind of puts it all together, so that you kind of, you have a sense of like, okay, I'm stepping here, and now I can step there, and now I can step here, and love it.
And I
Love
think
it.
it's funny you brought that up, because when I was kind of making up out of my head the river analogy of where you step on a rock and then another rock and then another rock, you started talking about, you know, taking forward steps and that kind of thing. And I had a vision in my mind of sometimes like you have to step on the first rock in order to even see where that second rock is. And sometimes you won't see it for a little bit, and then you do, you know? And so that whole idea of just taking those first tiny little steps, you're not going to see the whole picture, but it takes that initial movement to inspire and process through some motivation to get going through the next following up steps.
Yeah. And that's where like having that level of, you know, tapping into your courage and being brave and so on, and not feeling like you need to know.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, if you did know where you were going to end up, or you had it so planned, and I'm sure we've all done this, where we've tried to plan it. I know I have, still do, even though I know otherwise. Listen, the universe has something oftentimes much grander than you could ever imagine for yourself. So be thankful for the fact that we don't always know where it's going to end up. So anyway, Heather, thank you so much for spending some time with me. And I hope that you'll come back, and, you know, we love to collaborate.
Yes,
I'm going to put a whole bunch of links down below within the group for the jump rope, for Well Fit and Fed, and for the great resource that you shared. And Heather's in the group, so you can just plain old reach out to her. She's in the group. She's pretty soul-led too. Heather, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody else who showed up on this beautiful Wednesday to meet with us for 45 minutes and just share. I appreciate you, whether you are here live or you are listening later. Heather, have a fantastic extended long weekend.
Thank you so much, Laura. And anytime, just I'm a phone call away to collaborate with you, because I thoroughly enjoy it. And I'm so inspired by you and what you put out. So thank you.
Oh, you're so sweet. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a fantastic day. Bye, Heather.